Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's Design Cinema. This is Feng Zhu speaking, and let's just jump right into this week's tutorial. We're going to be doing two paintings and going to cover a subject sort of, I guess the best way to put it is spontaneous or happy accident type of painting. Now, I use this technique quite a bit, especially in the beginning of a project, which do not have some kind of set parameters yet. For example, you're asked to design some environments for an MMO video game, or perhaps alien planets for a film. And at that stage, the goal is to generate something that hasn't been seen before and something new, something cool. And when that kind of, I guess, clients or project approaches, some of the best way to do that is to start these paintings without too much planning. Because when you have too much planning, sometimes you already limit yourself to the ideas that might be generated. By working this kind of spontaneous mode, you end up with something that is not planned for in the beginning. So you can see here I'm laying down a bunch of random values. Now, I have no idea right now at this point what I'm going to paint. I'm just laying random values. And here's a technique I want to show you guys, which is pulling in a painting that I've done in the past and use that painting as sort of a base to start this new one. Now, the subject matter of the painting doesn't really come into play here. You know, there's UFO guys on this volcano planet. It doesn't matter. I'm borrowing the values from the previous painting to generate the values for this new painting. So again, this is something I use quite a bit. And a word of advice, do not do this with other people's paintings, because I've seen some people do that before, and that's extremely unprofessional and technically not even legal. So you got to do this with your own paintings. In that case, nothing is wrong, right? Since you're using your own. So anyways, I took that painting I've done in the past, and I'm just going to extract those values directly out from the painting and use it in this one. So even at this point, you can see there's some kind of form going on. It's starting to look like a robot or something, which I don't like. The scale's too big for the perspective I'm using here. So I'm actually going to change that design in a second here. I started this painting at a very high resolution, I think about 10,000 pixels high or something around that size. And this laptop I'm working on couldn't handle the res, so you can see some of the slowdowns. Later I'll de-res this back down to something that's workable while Camtasia is recording. So here I'm still messing around the design, but the thing is, by working spontaneous and achieving these happy accident forms, right, there's all these random stuff going on, I can actually turn this painting to anything I want at this point. It could be a giant monster walking there, it could be a city in the distance, it could be a robot, it could be whatever you want, because it's very similar to looking at clouds. Big puffy clouds, you can see random forms and everybody sees something different. And that's exactly the point of these type of paintings, is to spontaneously start a bunch of values and then from those values extract stuff that your eye sees. And I think I've arrived at a lot of paintings I personally like simply from this technique alone, in which we started without a line drawing, without any kind of plan of what's going to happen. In fact, a lot of the demos I do for our students here are done in this way. That before I start a class, I actually don't know what I'm going to go in painting, except for the technique I'm going to show. So it's very cool, but it's not very useful for, I think, client work that has more spec to them. For example, you have to follow a certain design direction. That is not as useful, but still could be used. So in this case, I'm doing another one. So I extracted a different painting that I've done a while back and kind of just mirrored it and just creating something on the page, creating an interesting canvas. And you can see even at this point, it looks pretty neat. You know, it's almost like a fine art materials painting or something like that, which is kind of cool. And that way, one, it gets rid of the nervousness of a blank canvas, which would be quite daunting to paint on. So right now I have some kind of teeth to grip my paintbrush on. So that kind of minimizes the stress level on a painting. And from there, I'm going to start extracting elements that's going to make this into something that actually makes sense. So, but this piece has some very cool textures on it, right? Just purely from the mirroring of the previous painting. And so I'm going to add some values. On both paintings right now, the left one starts to have something that makes sense. Looks like some kind of building or giant structure. But I do want to add two characters into this, or two little mechs, and I'll do that in a second here. This one here on the right is still a little weird, so I'm still in my mind trying to figure out, okay, what do I do with this big thing? So I decided to convert it into some kind of volcanic alien planet rock or something like that, right? So as I get to this point, I started to want to convert this painting into a kind of a book cover look to it, because we are using a vertical format, something I don't paint too often in. And so by doing so, I decided to, hey, maybe it'll look kind of cool as a kind of those classic sci-fi book covers you see on novels. So we'll do that in a second. Also, just take this time to answer a couple of questions, since from here on it's just painting, so you guys get to watch that. All right, let's just jump to some of the questions. One of them is request for fundamental stuff like perspective, lighting, anatomy. So I mentioned this in the past before, but that's something that I won't cover in Design Cinema because that's what our full-time students are here to learn. So about 50% of our entire course is grounded or rooted in fundamentals. Students spend a lot of time doing that kind of stuff, and then only once they learn that, they can then do the stuff you're seeing right now, which is these kind of paintings and stuff. But they don't do that for at least half the time. The reason for that is because fundamentals is the building blocks for everything. And if I give it out for free, then there's no really a point for running a school. And also, I don't think our students will be very happy. So anyway, so those subject matters won't really show up. However, you could learn those from books, from schools, or whatever resource you could find, which leads to the next question that we seem to get a lot, which is, do we need a school to learn this type of education? And the real answer is no. You don't have to go to any school to learn this kind of stuff. You can learn on your own. And I've addressed this question in the past before as well. The only thing is you have to be very, very disciplined. A school gives you information, and two, it gives you an environment in which you are working under pressure. You have classmates who are doing homework and putting the pressure on. So if you're lazy, as human beings, you start to notice that. So it puts that kind of pressure that perhaps working on your own you don't give yourself. Are you really going to stay up till 4 a.m. doing homework that you're going to assign to yourself? Mostly, I don't think so. I know most likely not, right? So that's and then also the key benefit of having a institution of some kind is someone's there to correct your mistakes. It's kind of like learning math. If you're doing a physics problem and the answer comes out wrong, and you check your formula like there's no way this is wrong. Why is the answer wrong? But thing is, on your own, that might take you hours to figure out. To a professional mathematician or physicist, they look at it maybe within 2 seconds to tell you, oh, it's right here. This is the problem. And then you'll never learn to do that again. You'll learn your mistakes, right? So it speeds things up. So learning your own completely works. You don't need to go to any school. But usually it takes a lot longer. I say probably 5-6 times longer than for perhaps going to an institution. So that's completely up to the individual on what they want to achieve. If it's time is a factor, or maybe they have something else they have to do. So learning your own is perfectly fine. So there's really no need. But a school does offer the previous things I mentioned. And the question that follows this one is also related, which is, what's the age group? Some of you guys are a little older, perhaps like my age, mid-30s. Is it too late to get into this business? And the answer to that one is it's a dual answer. I think the true answer is no. There's no age limit as far as getting into this business. I have many friends who are much older than I am that's working in this business. But the one thing you have to concern about, though, is your lifestyle. There's always these young kids coming out, even from my school here. They're like 20-something years old, super good portfolio. Guys coming out of Art Center, Noman, and all these various design schools. And they have very good work. And the thing is, they have their young age, in which allows them to stay up very late, perhaps work on multiple projects at the same time. All these elements that as an older person, you have to balance your life. Like, do I really want to do that at my age, to stay up 24 hours a day, devoting my entire lifetime to doing client work? I did that when I was young. When I was 20-something years old, I did the same thing. I take on 4 different freelance projects at once and pretty much work around the clock. But at my age now, I don't want to do that kind of stuff anymore. It's very tiring. So yeah, you can still get in at any age. It's just more of a lifestyle choice. Are you ready to commit that kind of stuff? Because the pressure in this business is very crazy. Because it's very competitive. You're competing with a lot of people who are very, very good. And the thing is, it's fun, but it's also a lot of work at the end of the day. So that's up to the individual again. So those are questions regarding the, education and background. Let me go back to this painting real quick. So you can see, as I talk, we kind of just block a bunch of stuff in. And a lot of this kind of stuff you can see in the previous tutorials as well. So I put in these little mech, dropped this guy in, started painting some of the background. Now, eventually, I'm going to cut this video and kind of fast forward to a more resolved version. Because once I rest this thing up to about 7,000 wide, I believe, at that point, this laptop and Camtasia do not like to work together. Everything becomes a super delay. And for me, I cannot paint when the brush has a micro delay, right? So I'm not talking about a 1 second. It's almost like 0.2 second delay, very, very short. However, you feel it on the brush, and it's very annoying to paint because you feel like the brush is having a hard time catching up to you. And that's why I stopped the recording, and we'll jump into something that's more refined later. Okay, back to a little bit more questions. Another one is the brush, custom brush. We get that question a lot. Can we get the custom brush? The thing is, the brush doesn't matter. And also, I mentioned this many times, the brush I'm using, you see me painting right now, is the default chalk brush. So just the only thing I did with it is turn off opacity. So as most brushes I have in Photoshop, I don't turn the opacity on. That's the one where if you guys are using a Wacom tablet, you'll see that it's defaulted to sensitivity or pressure. And I don't like to have opacity control that way. So that's just the personal choice. So some people do some pretty nice paintings with opacity on. So again, the brush thing really doesn't matter. You have to just find the one that makes you comfortable. The way I learned to paint in digital was a friend of mine told me, hey, just pick the brush you like and stick with it, and there is no wrong way to do anything. If you get a good result, who says the brush is good or bad, or it's whatever? It doesn't really matter. So that's the best way to learn. And really, use the default round brush to learn. That's the fastest way. That's how I learned. I stuck with the round brush for many, many years in the beginning. Only very recently have I started using some custom brushes. So. And even in this sense, the custom brush is not custom. It's a default Photoshop brush, right? So the only custom brush I have is kind of like a smoke brush and those kind of things, which are really fast to make. It takes about 5 seconds to make a brush in Photoshop, right? You can even make this painting into a brush. So Photoshop brush tool is very, very powerful. But like anything that has too many settings, you don't want to get caught up too much into that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you're wasting so much time on a technical aspect and not focusing on the main important factor, which is the work itself, right? So I mean, if you could do this with a piece of gouache on a canvas, it doesn't matter. Clients at the end of the day do not care about the process; they care about the final result. So anyway, so this painting, this little mech got knocked in pretty quick. So this is all part of the bug mech series I've been doing on my own. You guys might have seen some other ones in the past in which little insect dudes are building these mechs. So that's why they have a sort of insect look to them as well. So. And the background got turned into a volcanic sort of kind of monument type mountain, which is kind of neat. And I left enough space on the top part to put text because I do want to emulate a book cover. So in general, most book covers, their text is on the top. So I left that area sort of blank subject matter wise. So these mechs are not going to eat up the entire space compositionally. So here just painting some light, balancing some values out. Right, getting the main color. So I want these to look also like in a series. So something we recommend to our students here as well. When you are painting something or doing a drawing, try to usually do things in sets. Do 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever you want. Because for us in the design industry, it's about the ability to replicate design. Because when you have one of everything, like your portfolio, and I've seen that in the past, reviewing student portfolios, you have like a 3D rendering, then there's like a graphic design, then there's some kind of animation, then some kind of cartoony drawing, and then some realistic live painting. So every single image is different. In that sense, that portfolio to me is very hard to read because I have no idea what's the strength of this person applying for the job. Because you're showing everything, but not everything is done to 100% your best abilities. And also, I have no idea how they're created. Is it purely luck that you got to this image, or is it maybe the teacher helped you do this one, so therefore I have no idea. But when you start having things in the set that answers all those questions, because I could tell there's no way, for example, a teacher will help you do 5 different paintings for the same set. They'll help you with one. Do you know what I'm saying? So your ability to do that is one judged. And secondly, if you could replicate a design and repeat the same type of style or design language in another one, that shows you're capable of understanding what you're actually doing instead of achieving the painting or drawing by luck, right? Or by pure just random happening to look pretty cool. Do you know what I'm saying? So doing stuff in sets is very, very helpful in the designer's portfolio. Because in the real world, you will be replicating these kind of projects many, many times over, especially working in-house somewhere. You could be on a video game or a film for a year or 2 years. Some video games run for like 3 years in production. So you have to be able to stick with that kind of design language and carry it all the way through. Okay, let's go back to this painting here. So I fast forwarded here and painted some just various textures into the background. I also lightened up the sky because it was a little too gloomy. There was no hot values in the original painting. Everything was kind of like a 50% gray. So I decided to bring up the values a little bit in the background so we could play with a little bit of like a 1 or 10% or 20% light value to just balance out this painting. And also, so if you blur your eye, we start to get a sense of depth. I think for this painting, the left one works much better than the right one. So I actually prefer the left one because when you blur the eye, you start to see that giant structure behind it that looks very, very big and far away. Whereas the one on the right, it doesn't work as quite as well as I like. But, so I definitely prefer the one on the left. So I added some textures, some green stuff. And these textures actually from real insects. And you can see how that's done in the big bug, I guess, painting. I forgot what episode that was. And you can see how that's put in. So there's another question. Let's jump into questions as I paint, which is about layer settings. Now, for me, I actually don't use layer settings at all. I paint most of these flattened. So sometimes you'll see there might be 1 or 2 layers in which I can rotate the textures. But once I'm happy with it, I'll flatten my painting. So in these 2 paintings here, Actually, the entire two paintings are on one layer, and when I paint, I'll have one new layer. But as soon as I'm happy with the painting, I will collapse the layer and have no layers again. And all these layers are set on default. There is no special setting for them at all. So that's the way I prefer to work. I think it just goes back to more of a traditional type of thinking, where there's no layers and all that kind of stuff. And then for me, I like to have the mistakes and have the spontaneousness all exist on the single piece, because I think that's what adds life to a painting like this. Because when you have too many layers, it tends to kill the painting, in my opinion. I prefer paintings that look like they're handmade. I'm not very into this super tight, super rendered, it's almost like a photograph or something like that kind of paintings, because to me it's like it's too tight. I don't see the life of the creator inside the painting anymore. So I love these loose, spontaneous, quick, a few hours kind of paintings, because I could see the personality of the designer within them. So again, personal choice. Some people, they're very into the ultra tight, ultra finish photoreal paintings, but it depends on the market you're in. In the concept market, there really isn't a space for too much of that kind of stuff, because the speed is a major factor in our business, and you have to do these things very, very quick. So those other paintings, if you're lucky on a long-term project, perhaps you can have the time to finish them. But since I work mostly freelance, the clients would never say, hey, you have a week to do a painting. They're never going to do that, because in that kind of week, they could have way more concepts done, and they could always outsource a finished painting to an art studio somewhere. So because the rates are quite different. Concept rate is generally much higher than illustration rates, because they are paying for a product, a design idea, versus illustration, they're paying for art. So you have a lot more people who are capable of doing very, very beautiful artwork, especially if you provide the design. So there's a lot of friends of mine who do that kind of work, and they do beautiful paintings, but they generally require some kind of design to be passed to them before they do the painting. So two different worlds, two different industries, two different rates. So for me, it's all about getting the design and the idea down as fast as I can and move on to another piece, because that's what clients come to you to hire you for. So even in this case, these little book covers, for example, right? A perfect example would be, hey, we do these little comps, and perhaps for the client would do maybe 6 of these, instead of these 2, we'll do 6, and they'll pick one, and then that's it. Maybe they'll pay you for these comps, and that's it. And they could take these comps and go to a very established illustrator, perhaps, and have them finish the painting for you. Use the exact same composition, exact same color, except they're gonna work on the painting for, say, 3 weeks. Do this ultra crazy photoreal. Perhaps it's even in CG. Who knows? Do you know what I'm saying? So that's up to the client, and I've done that in the past many, many times, in which I designed covers for magazines, like CG World and all these video game magazines, but the final is being done by somebody else. And the reason for that is all about the money, the rate, right? The concept rate for have a concept artist do a finished painting is way more expensive than hiring a illustrator to do the same painting. So again, not making any kind of thing on the rates or anything like that, but that's exactly how the real world works. So the clients are very conscious of price. So they'll go to someone who, they use you for your skills, let's put it that way. So different people have different roles. All right, so let's get back to this painting. Just kind of nailing things out, almost completed. So I'm going to keep this relatively loose. I don't want to spend too much time on this kind of stuff. Just want to get a concept. So this will not be a finished book cover. If this is done this way, it'll definitely need a few more hours, maybe perhaps a day, if you want to bring this to a more of a presentation finish. But it's definitely good enough for a comp, so the clients in this case can understand what's happening. They can see the lighting, they can see the overall color palette, and approve the design, hopefully. So at this point, I'm painting about 7,000 pixel wide, 5,000 pixels high. So it's not a very high resolution painting, but it does seem to work okay with this laptop. Okay, I put some blues into the shadow areas to cool that stuff off, because both of these paintings are quite warm in their color palette, so I just want to cool that off. Here I'm making a little planet, just a quick sphere, render out a sphere, because planets are spheres, so it's a basic form. And I'm going to throw in a little bit of texture to emulate the kind of the rocks and stuff on the planet, so just a quick thing. You can see here Photoshop took quite a bit of a delay just putting that texture in, because the resolution is so high. Right, so kind of balance out that little planet. So again, trying to go for that kind of classic sci-fi. They always have these kind of settings, right? You have some guy walking on like a moonscape or something, and there's always some planet in the background, maybe a spaceship. I almost put spaceships flying around in this one, but it became a little bit distracting because I want these things to be grounded on the bottom, the composition. So by putting a spaceship on the top, it started to take the eye away. So I actually deleted them. I actually tried it in the when I wasn't recording. So you can see I'm putting some fake words on the top. Kind of cool, like emulate a book, right? And that's it. So it's a quick video, so hopefully you guys got something out of this. And I might do a session next week just on questions, because we get so many questions on the YouTube, and also a lot of you guys actually private message us, so we have a lot. So maybe I'll do just a Q&A, a special video or something like that to address those issues. I know that's very important, especially for younger students. So until then, I'll see you guys next week. Thank you. Bye bye.